Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Hello, everybody. Maybe. I don't know if you can hear me. I got a later start than I usually do. All of a sudden, I was doing something. I looked at the clock and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we are talking about Disney right now over on the From Screen to Theme." I was in my YouTube channel. I was doing some book stuff. I was looking at some videos and setting some stuff up so later on I could write. And I got kind of caught up into it. And then while I was getting caught up into it, I then looked at the clock and I was like, "Oh, it's 9:27." And I usually start getting this stuff ready at 9:20 for the show. So I was a little bit later than usual. Hello, hello. Yay, I'm back. Well, wait, where did I go? I've been here. Are you back? Because I've been around. Hey, howdy, hey, welcome to the practice round. Hello. It's hopping right now. We got a lot of people hopping on right now. How's everyone doing? We're getting closer and closer to the end of the year, sadly. It's kind of crazy how close we are to the end of the year. Today is our 747th episode, which means we only have 2 more episodes after today left of 2023. I've actually had a great time in 2023. Okay, so I don't know what this is before we get into the show here. Have you noticed, and this has been going on for the last few years now, but have you noticed how negative people get towards the end of the year? They're like, "Oh, can't wait for this year to be over." And I've never had a year where I'm like, "I can't wait." Even 2020, where everything that could go wrong went wrong, I still had a pretty darn good year. That's when I started doing daily YouTube videos, and people watched me slowly go insane over the course of it was 70 days of me being unemployed. And people just watch these videos of me slowly losing my sanity and making videos where I thought to myself, but overall, I had an amazing year that year. So I think it's kind of crazy that all these people get upset by it. I'll be at Epcot for New Year's celebration. Epcot is filled up right now. Do I have a reservation yet? I don't think I've got a reservation yet for New Year's Eve. However, I will be working New Year's Eve, so I will not be able to watch. I won't be able to be part of the celebration that evening. I will be at work making sure that our store is closed up before midnight so my staff can ring in the new year together. I mean, we'll be together celebrating, or maybe I can get off a little early and run over to a park, but I don't know. But everyone else is doing good, hopefully. All right, so tonight we're going to be going through and doing another. You guys are choosing the topic here, another episode here where you guys choose the topic. Before we get into our intro, our 3 topics are going to be either a continuation of our Disney 100 series. Let's do Connect the Dots, possibly, because we have not done a Connect the Dots episode for a long time. If you guys don't know what Connect the Dots is, you guys just keep on throwing different Disney topics into the comments, and I have to try to connect all the dots of how they're all connected in a great verse. It's like 3 steps to Kevin Bacon or 5 steps to Kevin. Something with Kevin Bacon, eating bacon. It's like that. Or what we can do is we can do a look at a Disney attraction. So start throwing out your suggestions into the things. While we get this party started, we're going to do the 747th episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 747th episode of the Wednesday show. Today is December 13th, 2023, and I am your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be going through and having it so you guys choose the topic. We just gave you guys the topics. It's going to be the Disney 100 or Connect the Dots or a Disney attraction. But of course, before we get to that, let's talk about our news for the week. Usually we start off the news with some very happy, very pepped up, very excited thing. However, today we do have some sad news that we just cannot go through the show and actually not start by talking about. Dick Nunes, who was the head of pretty much Disney parks. He was the head of Walt Disney Attractions which the title has changed drastically throughout the years. He passed away earlier today at the age of 91. He actually started off his career. We're going to do a quick, brief little thing about him, but he started off his career back in 1955. He was actually good friends with Ron Miller, who was married to one of Walt Disney's daughters. Ron Miller would eventually become the head of Disney for a few years until the mid 1980s when Michael Eisner would take over. But he was friends with Ron Miller. Ron Miller informed him about this place that was about to open up called Disneyland. He had a job at Disneyland doing training for people on how to become working at the happiest place on earth and just giving people an overall great sense of service. So if you know the amazing Disney service that you can receive while you're at the parks with smiles, happiness, just making sure that the cast member is treating you the right way, that actually all stems from Dick Nunis. I mean, Walt Disney instructed him on how to train these people, but Dick Nunis would actually go the extra mile, and he would coin several different things that still are used every single day right now for cast members being trained. So throughout his entire career, he worked for 44 years with the company and opened up things like Walt Disney World, Tokyo Disney, Disneyland Paris, and so many other great accomplishments throughout his career. But he is a Disney legend. He will be missed. So sadly, Dick Nunis, his family and friends are in our prayers. I'm really bummed about it. I never met Dick Nunis. He's one of those people that I actually always said, if I could meet another Disney legend, Dick Nunis was one of the top people in my list. So unfortunately, yes, he passed away today at the age of 91, but a nice, long life and 44 years with the Walt Disney Company. All right, but going on to happier news, if you didn't already know, every single Saturday we are doing our Saturday in the Park. If you want to join us every single Saturday over on my YouTube channel, we do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. Make sure you join us every single Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time for a whole lot of fun. And if you didn't know, every single day we are uploading a brand new YouTube video over on my YouTube channel. So make sure you're checking those out along with my YouTube shorts that we are uploading every single day as well. Today's full video was about the Christmas decorations at Contemporary, and today's short video was about Test Track and, well, the Test Track trash cans. So if you want to check those out, make sure you go check out my YouTube video. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe. I am tired today, so I apologize if I'm like slurring over my words. Let's take a look here. I forgot to pull up the other thing. But of course, if we go into extra innings here, if we get more subscribers, we are starting off at 8,548 subscribers. Every time we get more subscribers as we go through here, we will continue as we go through. And of course, as always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. If you need a way to go through life and you don't have a boat, you need some Patreon pals. That was completely new. I didn't know what I was doing until I started doing it, and I stand by it. Okay, so looking into it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Is it 6 degrees? I thought it was less than that. Apparently it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We've got people in the chat room saying connect the dots, connect the dots, connect the dots. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to play a game of Connect the Dots. Now, if you've never joined us for a Connect the Dots episode before, this is how it's going to work. You are going to give us just random things about Disney in the comments. Now, try to make it so it's like specific things. Like, don't say Magic Kingdom. Say something like Carousel of Progress. And then the next person in the thing might say something like Herbie the Love Bug. And the entire, I don't know why I gave those two things, because that would be a tough one to connect. And now I know people are going to be like, aha, I know what I want to put down. But then what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be going through and trying to have it so we go through and connect these things all together. We're going to be going in the order that people are actually posting the words in. And as always, if you put something in the comments, make sure that you are not putting the next comment in as well. So if you are putting one comment in, then you have to wait for someone else to put a different topic into the comments before we go on from there. Hello, Candace. Every time I see Candace's name, I want to say, "Oh, there you are, Candace," but it's there you are, Perry. Candace is the sister of Phineas and Ferb. Not this Candace, although that'd be pretty cool too. So we are waiting for a second one. Right now, we do have our first topic in the comments, but we need a second topic to connect it to. And yeah, so we'll just keep on going through and we'll connect every single thing all together. Okay, we got things coming in here. Let's the magic begin here. Keep on throwing topics in there because we will continue to connect the dots between two things at Disney until our time is up. Tomorrowland Orchestra. Now, I assume that what you mean by the Tomorrowland Orchestra is that amazing poster that is found when you are walking into Tomorrowland. Now, there's actually two different spots that you can actually find this specific poster at. One is at the entrance of Tomorrowland. The other one's actually found inside of Anti-Gravities. Now, Anti-Gravities is an ice cream shop, and you know how much I love my ice cream. Now, Anti-Gravities is, of course, named after anti-gravity. Like, that's a play on words. Who knew? But Anti-Gravities is not the only ice cream shop that you can find inside of the Magic Kingdom. There's actually several different places that you can find ice cream around the Magic Kingdom. Actually, one of my favorite crazy challenge ideas that I have involves ice cream around the Magic Kingdom. I just have not gone through and filmed it yet. I do need a volunteer to help me film it at some point, but it will be a crazy challenge. It will take 20 minutes for me to completely do, and it will consist of me probably having the worst stomachache I'll ever have in my entire life. But in addition to Anti-Gravities, we do have Storybook Treats up in Fantasyland. In addition to that, we also have down on Main Street, USA, the Plaza Ice Cream Shop. And then some people would also say over in Adventureland, we also have the amazing, the super duper, the fantastic Dole Whip, which I'm actually not a fan of. But that's besides the point. But Dole Whip is where we got to next there. Now, Dole Whip is one of those things. It is a classic icon throughout all of the Disney years. If you go through the history of Disney, the Dole Company has actually done several different sponsorships with Disney throughout the years, including things like the Enchanted Tiki Room. Now, the Enchanted Tiki Room was actually the very first time that Disney ever actually had an audio animatronic show. It would open up in 1963 with the Tiki 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 Room. In the Tiki 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 Room, all the birds sing words and the flowers croon in the Tiki 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 Room. Now, the Tiki Room, like I said, came out in 1963, and as time has gone through, the different progression of audiomatronics throughout the years has just continued to progress further and further and further into the future with so many different advancements. However, the most important thing is going back to that 1963, because when you go through it and say the 1963, there's also 1950s. In the 1950s, of course, we had the idea of Disneyland being born. Actually, in 1955 was really the true start of Disney parks. And the first 5 centuries, or the first 5 decades, are the first 5 that were really truly embraced, especially in places like Pop Century. Now, Pop Century had actually originally was going to have 2 different sections. There was going to be the classic years, and then there was also going to be like the original years too. So you're going to have the 0s, 10s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, but instead we also ended up with the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s eventually when this resort would open up shortly after 9/11 would happen, and pretty much all future projects were put on hold for a very short time because the travel industry just kind of collapsed at that time. However, with Pop Century opening up back in 2003, they decided to have it so there was going to be a few different things that people could do to really enhance their experience. Now, one is, of course, having so there's 3 different swimming pools there. You got the hippy dippy pool. You also have it so you've got the bowling pin pool, and then over in the 90s section, we also had the laptop pool as well. However, one of my favorite things that you can actually do at Pop Century to truly embrace the culture is every single day at 5 o'clock, you can do the hustle. So, by the way, we just had a bunch of people who came on. Right now, we're playing a game called Connect the Dots. What you guys are doing is throwing several random items inside of the comments about anything and everything Disney. We are connecting everything together. So let's continue here. So in the so we have the hustle dance that can be found over at Pop Century. Now, when this would open up in 2003, like I said, there was a lot of different things that were happening in the Disney community that just kind of started to shut down because of 9/11 happening just a few years prior. And one of them was not continuing this. However, there were a few other projects that were being finished at this point. And one of them Actually, the next one that would open up would be shortly after Pop Century would be Mickey's PhilharMagic, and there was only one other attraction that was currently underway to open up in 2004, and would actually still be opening up in 2004, and that would be Stitch's Great Escape, or as I like to call it, Stitch's Great Mistake. By the way, you guys have to go through and keep on throwing some different items into the comments below, because right now we've only got about 3 more items to finish up our connections. We want more than that. So keep on throwing your Disney items. It could be anything and everything, whether it's a movie, a character, a ride, food. You guys are really choosing food today a lot, and so much more. Okay, so Stitch's Great Escape. Okay, Stitch's Great Escape, or Stitch's Great Mistake, took the place of the extraterrestrial alien encounter. Now, the extraterrestrial alien encounter was actually the third project that George Lucas worked on with the Disney Imagineers. The first one would be Star Tours, and then, of course, we would also have Captain EO, or maybe it was Captain EO and then Star Tours. I apologize. I got out of hand there. So when he would go through and create things like Captain EO, we would actually have it so this would be playing over at the Epcot Theater. Now, this Epcot Theater originally had it so there was a completely different 3D attraction show there, and as time would go on, we would get different attractions there as well. Currently, sitting there is a Mickey Mouse and Pixar Film Festival, or Disney Pixar Film Festival, where you can watch 3 different cartoons. One of them is one of my favorite of all time, which is called Get a Horse. Now, Get a Horse tells the story of Mickey Mouse and Horace Horsecollar, and it's set as a 3D film, but it's actually supposed to be a 1920s film. That was a forgotten footage. Actually, when I went to the D23 Expo back in 2011, I want to say, it could be 2009, maybe 2013, I can't remember. But during one of these, they actually had it so they set it up as we found a lost Mickey Mouse cartoon, and it's finally been put out, and you guys are going to be the first people to ever watch it in the entire world. And I was like, holy cow, this is absolutely amazing. So we were given this amazing treat that would just be completely blown away. So during that trip out there to the D23 Expo, in addition to that, we met so many different people like Bob Gurr. We also met Don Hahn. Who else did we meet out there? We met a lot of different people. Let's go with Don Hahn, though. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to get to the next thing, but we're going to get to the next thing. Believe me. So Don Hahn would actually be the executive producer on things like Beauty and the Beast. Tell us all this time. Song as true as rhyme. I am just trying to kill some time while I try to figure out this connection here. We're going to do it right now. Okay, so when Beauty and the Beast would come out back in 1991, they would actually open up the theater show at this very exact same time, which would be found over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. It was called Beauty and the Beast Live on Stage. Now, Beauty and the Beast Live on Stage would become an immediate hit, and it still is playing to this very day. And it actually is one of the only theater shows, actually it's the only theater show that would have been around since pretty much when the park first opened up. Granted, it came out 2 years after the park would open up, but it still standed the test of time, that along with Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. Now, one of the amazing things about Disney's Hollywood Studios is the way that it's actually connected to Epcot, because along the way in the middle there, we have Hourglass Lake. Hourglass Lake is the, or I'm sorry, not Hourglass Lake, that's over at Pop Century. We already talked about Pop Century, now we're talking about Hourglass Lake, but not Hourglass Lake, it's Crescent Lake. So Crescent Lake has been a waterway that has been sitting there since Epcot first opened up. And when Disney's Hollywood Studios opened up, they said, you know what, this is going to be the perfect connection between the two things. Along the way, we've had 3 different Disney resorts open up, along with 2 other resorts, which are not Disney, which is the Swan and Dolphin. But the 3 that are Disney owned is the Boardwalk, along with the Beach Club and Yacht Club. And in between the Beach Club and Yacht Club, we have an amazing restaurant, which has several different amazing desserts, including the kitchen sink. A whole can! That's right, a whole can of whipped cream. Now, speaking, that took forever to get to. So a whole can of whipped cream. Now, when you go to several different locations around Disney, there are several different things that are themed around words or play on words. Things like the kitchen sink, which, you know, everything but the kitchen sink is a common phrase, and that's why they have it so that entire thing is the entire thing takes place or is served inside of a kitchen sink because of the common phrase. And if you go to the restaurant, everything but the kitchen sink are the ingredients for that specific location. Now, in addition to that, we've had so many other really fun words that have been put into play, but some of the most recent ones are actually found over at Deluxe Burger. At Deluxe Burger, there's been three, not just one, not two, but three different burgers that have come out in recent times that have actually been named after some random things. For instance, we've got the Orange Garage. That's right, it's named after the actual parking garage that is found over at Disney Springs. We've got the Grapefruit Garage, and then also we have the Lime Garage. True story. So the Lime Garage is actually a burger. It sounds absolutely disgusting to me altogether, but the Lime Garage is a burger that you can find over at Deluxe Burger. Now, Deluxe Burger, it does have a storyline that takes place way back in the 1920s, back when talkies were still a thing. Actually, we go all the way back to the early film days with the story that takes place at Deluxe Burger. Now, the entire story actually focuses around the tree outside, and when you look at that tree, it actually is supposed to symbolize the start of the entire Disney Springs experience. Now, if you go down to guest relations, it actually kind of ties into that idea that here's this tree, but it also talks a little bit about the different things like the World's Fairs back in the 1920s and 1930s. Now, when we're going through and talking about these World's Fairs in the 1920s and 1930s, some of the different things that are highlighted on the walls that are found throughout guest relations are things like films that, are silent, and then also some new talkies, things like, Steamboat Willie, which would come out back in 1928. But let's not talk about that yet, because there are other things that we should be talking about, like Cinemagique. Now, Cinemagique is a show that originated over in Disneyland Paris, and then it made its way over to the Disney Studios Park, which is also part of Disneyland Paris Resort, but it's the second park. And in that show, we actually had it so as Martin Short going through the decades of how he could go through and have it so he was an actor who started off on the stage, like literally took a phone call while we had different movie scenes going on, and then he was actually teleported onto the stage. And when he actually was teleported onto the screen itself, he went through the entire story of cinema as Martin Short, interacting with all these different random people. Overall, amazing show if you ever had the chance to see it. Unfortunately, it's closed right now. This was not the only time that Martin Short has ever been part of the Disney family. However, back in 2002, Disney would release an animated film called Treasure Planet, and in that, Martin Short would actually be the role of Ben, the robot. And then on top of that, over in Epcot, at one point, he was actually the host of a show called O Canada. Now, O Canada would be going through, by the way, one of my favorite lines from O Canada was the fact that Martin Short would be like, wasn't it great that my parents had a Circle Vision camera? Because he shows some footage from his Little League hockey days. I just think that's a great line. So O Canada would go through and have it so while you're going through, you would be going and being told about everything about Canada, except for, of course, Winnipeg, because Winnipeg always gets the shaft, according to my friend Alex, who's from Winnipeg. But so when we would go through and have it so, O Canada, at the very end of it, Martin Short would go through and he would try to get out of the screen and go, I gotta go. I gotta fast pass the Soarin' that I want to get. And speaking of Soarin', because obviously we're at Soarin' right now, when you go over to Soarin', you go through so many different places around California. Now, including in these is places like the Golden Gate Bridge, Yosemite National Park, and then, of course, at the very end, we have Disneyland itself with Tinkerbell flying above. Now, Tinkerbell has appeared in several different attractions throughout the years, including this one. She can also be found over at the American Adventure. Of course, she is also found over at Peter Pan's Flight. Now, Peter Pan's Flight has it so you can go through and take a ride through the stars. It's amazing. I absolutely love Peter Pan's Flight. It's one of my favorite attractions of all time. But did you know that in Peter Pan's Flight, if you take a look above the exit, you can find two different weather vanes. One of the weather vanes is a ship. It is the Jolly Roger. It is the ship that Captain Hook drives. Not like that, but apparently he drives like that. And then also you can find Tick-Tock the Crocodile. Now, in addition to Tick-Tock the Crocodile and the Jolly Roger, there are so many other weather vanes that are found all around Disney property, including above the actual wedding pavilion, you can find Mickey Mouse in a heart. This is actually the exact same weather vane that can be found above Minnie Mouse's house over in Disneyland. So Minnie Mouse, of course, has a love for Mickey Mouse. However, one of the things that we never really talk about that much is Minnie Mouse's connection to Pluto. Now, originally, Minnie Mouse was actually the original owner of Pluto. Eventually, Mickey would take ownership. And then in some later cartoons, Minnie would be the owner again for it. But overall, Mickey is now the owner. Minnie was the owner at one point. But speaking of Pluto, Pluto's original name was Rover. And also, there are a few different spots around the park that you can hear the name Pluto without actually seeing the character of Pluto. One of those is actually spoken by our good friend, Sonny Eclipse. At one point, he says that Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse were in there looking for Pluto. Boy, are they a few million miles off. Wait, let me figure out where we're going next. Okay, you guys are throwing some really tricky ones out here today. We are going to get through all of them. We will connect them all. So Sonny Eclipse is paid weekly by Cosmic Ray. Very weekly. Side note, I absolutely love Sonny Eclipse. I think Sonny Eclipse is one of the most underrated characters in all of the Disney parks. And if you've never actually gone through and experienced Sonny Eclipse, I highly recommend going out and experiencing Sonny Eclipse at some point. Okay, so Sonny Eclipse does take place over at Cosmic Ray's Starlight Cafe. And then here's a really cool little different thing. I call it the Tomorrowland Tango. That's coined by me. I don't think anyone else has ever used it, but I actually used it as part of my 50 Years Fun Day, 50 Years, 50 Days, 50 Fine series back in 2021 in honor of the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. But Cosmic Ray Starlight Cafe, along with Tomorrowland Terrace, actually were names of different places, and they actually swapped spots. So they were in different locations, and they've actually swapped around. Now, speaking of swapping names around, because it's actually a very common thing at Disney, is if you go over to the area that is found by Wilderness Lodge / Contemporary, I'm losing my thoughts right now, but that's Bay Lake. In the middle of Bay Lake, you can find an island, which is also known as Discovery Island. Discovery Island has also gone through the exact same thing that we were talking about here, except for Discovery Island is no longer known as Discovery Island there, but it's still referred to as Discovery. It's confused. But Discovery Island actually had it so that name switched to a different location, which is found over in Disney's Animal Kingdom, because the central area that is found in Disney's Animal Kingdom is known as Discovery Island. Much like the Tomorrowland Tango switch, we also had the switch here as well. Prior to this, it was actually known as Genesis. Now, they would change the name because they said, you know what, Discovery Island is actually a great name. Prior to Discovery Island, found over in Bay Lake. I don't know why I can't keep on thinking of the word Bay. It's like three, but anyways, it's 3 letters. But over at Bay Lake, that originally was Treasure Island, and at one point it was a different name as well. I can't think of the name, but it was the family's name that actually owned the specific island. So we would go through and we'd have lots of different switching things around there. But that's besides the point. We're right now talking about Discovery Island over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So Disney's Animal Kingdom actually is broken up into several different sections. We've got the Oasis, Discovery Island, Dinoland USA, Africa, Asia, and of course, Pandora, the world of Avatar. Now, Pandora, the world of Avatar. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. We go through an entire rich backstory about different things that can be found in the world of Pandora. It actually takes place several years, about 60 years after the events of the very first movie. Not a big fan of the movies. I think visually stunning, not a big fan of the movies. Pandora, the area over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, I am a fan of that. I think that's actually extremely cool. But let's talk a little bit about restrooms, because the restrooms that are found in Pandora are actually set to be, they're stationed to be little lockdown points. So if you need to have it so you get a whiff of oxygen, or if something terrible goes wrong and you need to have it so there's a hazard thing, that is actually the restrooms. If you go to the restrooms, it actually is a lockdown area. So each stall is actually a lockdown spot for you to have your safety at. Pretty cool. Now, there's several different restrooms that are found around Walt Disney World that have several different elaborate backstories. One of them, of course, being one of my favorites, which is the Tangled Toilets over in Fantasyland. If you go into both sets of bathrooms, I've never been inside the women's room. However, when I was writing a book called A Closer Look at the Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland, I did have to have it so I had my friends go in there and describe to me exactly what they saw in there so I could cover the women's restroom part, because the men's restroom is themed all around the guards, aka the horses that are found throughout the area. And then you can also find frying pans throughout. And then if you go into the women's restroom, apparently, I've never seen it myself, it's in my book, but what I've been told is if you go through, the different items that are found on the top are actually a reference to the song 7 a.m. the usual morning lineup. But of course, if you're in the men's room or the women's room, in the background, you can hear several different songs that are played from Tangled, which is actually one of the really interesting things, because even when you're in the restrooms at Disney, you can still, I didn't realize this was going to be turned into a bathroom episode, but apparently we're talking into a bathroom episode. While you're actually in the restrooms at Disney, you can still hear amazing music. But if you want to hear the greatest music soundtrack of all time while going to the bathroom, then may I suggest going over to Epcot, because there are several different amazing restrooms in Epcot. Yes, this is turned into a bathroom episode. Some of them, which, if you want some privacy, or if you want to have it so it's a guarantee you're going to get like a stall or a urinal, go to the ones that are found over at World Showplace, the location that's between UK and Canada. Oh, Canada, which we already talked about. Or if you want to, you can go to the ones that are over by Figment, because most people don't even know that these restrooms exist. But behind Figment and behind the Journey of Imagination with Figment, you can actually hear old songs like Magic Journeys, which actually used to be featured right there as before Captain EO was there, which we'd actually talked about, ironically, just a few minutes ago. But if you go right around the corner there, you can also hear some of the music from the original Journey into Imagination with Figment, including things like One Little Spark. And of course, One Little Spark inspired the character of Figment. One little spark of inspiration. Now, original Epcot, I should say, not original Disney. Original Epcot had so many classic things. Things like Journey into Imagination, and it had Figment along with the Dreamfinder. In addition to that, we had several other classic attractions. Things like the Living Seas. We also had things like Living with the Land, or Listen to the Land. Now it's Living with the Land. We had Food Rocks. We had things like World of Motion. And then, of course, one of my favorite things of all time was over at the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Now, the Wonders of Life Pavilion is still sitting there. It was supposed to become the Play Pavilion, and then construction has kind of halted on that. However, if you go backstage during a Run Disney race, you can see that there's still construction stuff outside. So I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, just give me what you told me you're going to do, because I missed the Wonders of Life Pavilion drastically. It was one of my favorite spots. Inside, we had one of my favorite Epcot attractions, probably my favorite Epcot attraction of all time, which was Cranium Command. And right next to Cranium Command, we had Body Wars. Body Wars. Now, Body Wars would actually take you through the body. It was kind of like being in the Magic School Bus, like the, Miss Frizzle and the little nerdy kids. Little nerdy kids. I was a little nerdy kid too. I'm a nerdy adult now instead. But no, I'm still a kid. Take it back. But okay, so Body Wars would actually have it so you would enter into the bloodstream, and while you're there, you're just kind of wiggling around and having it so you went on this epic journey. Now, one of my favorite little fun facts to point out to people is when Body Wars was closed down permanently, the things were actually still sitting there. The simulators were still sitting there. Actually, as far as I know, they are still sitting there to this very day. But the Imagineers, when they were working on Star Tours 2.0, The Adventures Continue over at Disney's Hollywood Studios, they would actually program these ones to be playing the show that they would eventually place into the other location as well. Because Star Tours is just one of the most elaborate attractions of all time. In fact, it's gone through more changes than pretty much any other Disney attraction, which is mind-boggling to me, because when you talk to people about it, they think about Captain Rex, who was the original one, voiced by Pee Wee Herman. That was a terrible Pee Wee Herman impression. And then in 2011, we get Star Tours, and then just shortly after that, we would have it so we would start to get more and more different scenes that were changing over from time to time to time. In fact, every single time that we've gotten a brand new Disney movie, we've got Star Wars movie, we got in brand new Star Wars scenes, and we are going to be getting more inspired by Ahsoka in the very, very, very near future, which I'm extremely excited about. But that's not what we want to talk about, because right now we are going through and talking about the things that you guys want to talk about, and we are trying to figure out how to get to the next one. That is why I am kind of taking my time right now. But if you continue going through the history of Star Tours, should we talk about the history of Star Tours here? Now, prior to Star Tours, there was also, so Star Tours originally actually was built over in Disneyland's Tomorrowland. And if you go to Disneyland's Tomorrowland, prior to that, they had several different things, but we don't really want to talk about that. Let's talk about Disneyland for a little bit here. So Disneyland, if you go down Main Street USA, Disneyland, a lot of the different locations there are actually based off of Marceline, Missouri, like what Walt Disney remembered as Marceline, Missouri when he was growing up. They had things like a penny arcade, and they also had things like the ice cream shop and the Emporium. But let's focus on ice cream, because we love ice cream. Even though we've already talked about the kitchen sink today, it would just kill me if we didn't talk about more ice cream, because there are so many different delicious ice cream snacks found throughout Walt Disney World, Disneyland, etc., etc., etc. Over in Disneyland, you've got an amazing ice cream sundae over there with peanut butter, but it does not beat the No Way Jose that can be found over at Walt Disney World, again, at Beaches and Cream, because that's just, apparently we're talking about Beaches and Cream all night tonight. If you are joining us right now, what we are doing, because we just had a lot more people who are joining us, we are doing a Connect the Dots episode. You guys are throwing different items into the comments, and we are connecting them to the previous comment that is found in the comments. So keep on throwing your Disney things into the comments, and we will continue to connect them. If we have not hit our subscriber goal by the end of the evening, we will stop right at 10:30. However, if we get more subscribers as we go through, we will continue going into extra innings. But right now we are talking about the No Way Jose. Now, the No Way Jose, like I said, we talked a little bit about Beaches and Cream earlier. So let's take a step outside of Beaches and Cream, because outside of Beaches and Cream, we've got Hurricane Hannah's. We've also got we've got what else do we have there? We've got the world's largest sea bottom swimming pool, which is a really, really cool feat. Now, there are several different swimming pools around Walt Disney World that are extremely elaborate and tell amazing backstories. There's also some that don't really go through and tell the most elaborate backstories. I'm looking at you, Wilderness Lodge. I'm sorry, not Wilderness Lodge, Fort Wilderness. I'm looking at you, Fort Wilderness. Fort Wilderness has some things in there, but it's not like the most elaborate backstory of all. However, as time has gone on, Disney has started to realize that, hey, you can even have a great elaborate backstory being told at the actual pools there as well. Now, for instance, one of my favorites is the Caribbean Beach Pool. It's like this entire pirate setting. You're like, have the pirate fort there. It's just one of the most elaborate themed pools. And I remember going to Disneyland for the very first time, or not the very first time, but my first time as an adult. And I remember going by the pools and thinking, this is all they have. And then a few years later, when I went there, they had finally upgraded their Disneyland pools, and they actually had it so the one that's at Disneyland Resort itself is shaped like monorails going down. It's one of the coolest things ever. Now, the monorails, along with so many other amazing things, were actually created by the Imagineer named Bob Gurr. Now, Bob Gurr would actually have it. So let's take a step back here and talk about one of the most impressive days in the history of the Disney company and the history of Disney parks, which was back in 1959. Back in 1959, we had one specific day where there were three, not just one, not just two, but three iconic attractions that would open up on the exact same day. One of them being the monorail, one of them being the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarines, or just the submarines as we refer to it. And the last one would be the Matterhorn. Now, Bob Gurr would actually go through and create did you hear the honk? I don't know. There would be two of these attractions. The Matterhorn, along with the monorail, would be the main person who would be designing them would be actually Bob Gurr himself. I just realized I could just point at the words down here. These are the things we're talking about. We're not talking about Alex, but we're talking about Bob Gurr. Sorry, Alex. But so when you would actually go through, Bob Gurr did so many amazing things throughout the years with the Disney company. Some of them, obviously, things like that. We also have things like Autopia. Pretty much there was a time where they said, if it drives, there's a really big chance that Bob Gurr was the person who actually designed it. So let's talk a little bit about Autopia. Let's talk about Autopia. So while you're on Autopia, there are several different things. There was actually a midget Autopia at one point, which was a smaller vehicles for smaller children where the kids could drive and the adults were not even allowed to go in there. I would have been bummed if I went out there and I was not able to go on that as an adult. So I'm glad that that no longer exists. Sorry, kids. But it actually had it so they increased the entire track because of that. Now, when they would go through and create things like Autopia, one of the things that they didn't really realize they were going to do is Tomorrowland would be going through some drastic changes. Actually, if you go to current Tomorrowland, it's almost completely different than the Tomorrowland that was back in 1955. One of the few things that actually stuck around is Autopia. But that's just one of the things that happened with Disney. It's like so many times they would go through and have it so they continue to do changes. Now, Tomorrowland would be one of those locations that they realized that they needed to have a little bit room to expand because of these changes. Now, the very first time that they would go through an expansion was shortly after the park first opened up. Now, they wanted to have it so they would build more and more room, and that is what eventually would lead to the Florida Project or Walt Disney World. We've talked a lot about Walt Disney World throughout the years. I mean, for like the last 747 episodes, we pretty much focused mainly on Walt Disney World and a few other things as well. However, let's talk a little bit more about Walt Disney World, because when we would go through and have it so we built Walt Disney World, they had it so there was enough room to hold all the ideas that our imaginations could possibly hold. Walt Disney. But when they would go through, right off the bat, they would have things like the Magic Kingdom, Contemporary Resort, and Polynesian. And the entire concept of Walt Disney World was, hey, we would have enough room to expand our ideas and grow more ideas as the years would go on. 50 days after Walt Disney World would open up, we would have our very first expansion of the parks, and that expansion would be Fort Wilderness Campground. Now, Fort Wilderness Campground would open up exactly 50 days after the entire Walt Disney World Resort would open up. And inside of it, we would have several different things that allowed people to just kind of sit back and relax. One of my favorite things that I never got to experience was the Fort Wilderness Railroad that would actually go through the entire campground. If you actually still go to this day, you can actually find the railroad tracks. I've done a few videos about them in the past, so make sure you go check that out sometime. But you can actually go through and you can actually go on those railroad tracks, but it's literally just the tracks, and there's literally not much of it left over. But you can go find those tracks. In addition to that, the old train cars used to be the ticket booths for Pleasure Island, which would open up back in 1989. Now, Pleasure Island, if you never had the opportunity to go through and actually experience it, Pleasure Island had it so the entire storyline took place around Merryweather Pleasure. It was not based off of Pleasure Island from Pinocchio, which a lot of people thought it was. I used to think that too until I started to do some research on it, but it was actually based off of Merryweather Pleasure. Now, Merryweather Pleasure would actually have it so he would have several different factories and stuff that were found in the area, things like a fireworks factory. And when he would come over and actually take over this entire area, he made it so this entire thing was completely elaborate and made it so people could come over and party the night away. In fact, one of my favorite things about it is every single night there was New Year's Eve. So every single night leading up to midnight, you would have a fireworks show. And it was not a great fireworks show, but you would have a countdown, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year! And the entire crowd would go crazy. Now, prior to this, they had it so there were different spots around the property that would have elaborate fireworks shows for specific reasons. Now, of course, you would have things like Magic Kingdom and Epcot at this point, and Disney's Hollywood Studios would have Fantasy in the Sky. But overall, most of the fireworks shows that took place did not take place outside of the parks, with a few exceptions. So let's talk a little bit about one of the things that they built for a fireworks show, and a one-time fireworks show for that matter. Now, if you've ever seen that movie, what's it called? Cocktail, with Tom Cruise, you may not realize that's actually a Disney-owned movie. What? Yeah. So Cocktail, starring Tom Cruise, actually has it so that entire thing is based off of it's a Touchstone picture, and Disney actually owned Touchstone, and they created it for their more mature audiences. Now, in the movie Cocktail, they actually had it so they hired a few different bands to make some songs for it, and one of them was the Beach Boys. Now, the Beach Boys would actually go through and write a song called Kokomo. We'll be down in Kokomo, we'll get there fast and then we'll take it slow. Bermuda, Jamaica, come on, pretty, the song. But anyways, now, when they would actually go through and have it, so they created the song Kokomo, they decided to actually film the music video for Kokomo at none other than Disney's Polynesian Resort in front of the brand new resort that opened up the exact same year, which would be Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. Now, if you ever go to Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa, fun fact actually, the Beach Boys, along with John Stamos, who would often be the drummer for the Beach Boys, on and off, depending on if the drummer could make the shows or not. The Beach Boys, along with John Stamos, were actually the first guests ever to stay over at the Grand Floridian. But when we would go through inside of the Grand Floridian, there were several more upscale experiences for the guests to experience. Now, in addition to some of these, which would be, elaborate pampering in the spa, there would also be one elaborate dining experience, which would be a 5-star review restaurant, which would be known as Victoria and Albert's. Now, Victoria and Albert's allows guests to go up and have a high dining style. It is not my type of thing, so I've never actually been up there. Give me, a No Way Jose, which we talked about in detail just a few minutes ago. But also, we have some more people who are popping on right now. If you guys are just joining us right now, we are doing a game called Connect the Dots, where you are throwing different items at me, and I am trying to connect the dots from one thing from Disney to another thing at Disney. So keep on throwing your favorite things at Disney into the comments, and we will continue to connect the dots. Okay. So Victoria and Albert's would be kind of considered like a more like kind of like a more exclusive club type of experience. Now, there's been several different exclusive type club experiences around Walt Disney World and Disneyland. The first one, obviously, being Club 33, being the most popular one of all. It's this cup right here behind the splash is a Club 33 thing. I had the opportunity to go there at one point. But in addition to that, so Club 33, how Club 33 actually got formed was because of the 1964 World's Fair. So when the 1964 World's Fair was going on, one of the things that they actually had was Walt Disney was going through all these different sponsorship booths, and he realized that a lot of these sponsorship booths had it so they had these exclusive lounges just for the people that they were pampering during this thing. And Walt said, you know what? I absolutely love that idea. We've got a lot of different sponsors that are found over in Disneyland. So maybe I will make an exclusive club for these people, and they can come up, and when they're at Disneyland, they can get a fine wine and dine treatment. And he essentially made the very first themed restaurant with the Blue Bayou, along with Club 33, being created at the same time. Unfortunately, Walt Disney never actually got to live to see Club 33. However, one of the things that did come out of this was the idea of this exclusive wine and dine club level experience. Now, as time would go on, Walt Disney, the company, not the man, the company would start to go through and have it so they would start to create more and more lounges around Disney based off the sponsorships. So, for instance, if you go to Spaceship Earth, on the backside of Spaceship Earth, you can see those windows there that are looking out towards World Showcase. That is actually an exclusive club for the sponsor of Spaceship Earth. Right now, they don't have one. If you go up to Test Track, on the second floor of Test Track, they actually have a special exclusive lounge up there for members of Chevrolet. If you're work for Chevrolet, you can actually go up there. I have one of my friends who actually got me up there a few times. Really cool experience. But a lot of these different things that they kind of had through, a lot of them just never really got the full exposure that they ever had. For instance, like, I don't know if many people know this, but there's actually a club level that's above Maelstrom. Or I'm sorry, not above Maelstrom. In Norway, above where Frozen Ever After is, there's actually a club level up there. They don't let people go up there very often. However, if you want to, spend some money, you do have the opportunity to get up there as part of an exclusive party. But right below it is Maelstrom. That's why I said Maelstrom earlier. Trying to figure out how we're going to get there, and we got there. Wait, Poochie. Who are you referring to as Poochie? Because I'm thinking, I think the Poochie I'm thinking of is a different Poochie than you're thinking. We're going to go to the next one. Okay. Unless I get an explanation on which Poochie you're thinking of. But the Poochie I'm thinking of is from The Simpsons, and I can't think of any other one else now that I'm set on that Poochie. So Maelstrom was not an opening day attraction over at Epcot. It actually started off in it opened up in 1988 when the Norway Pavilion would actually open up, and in it we would have it so we would get to see everything that represented Norway in the best possible way. Things like oil rigs, Vikings, polar bears, and of course our favorite, trolls. Back over the falls. Dude, I miss them so much. I really do. That Maelstrom was just such a great attraction. I always said that I wish that we would have had it so if they would have actually built Frozen Ever After in someplace else, I think more people would appreciate Frozen Ever After. But considering it took the place of Maelstrom, I think a lot of people were just so bummed out that it took the place of Maelstrom that they just never really forgave it. I think Frozen Ever After is a great attraction. I really do. Okay, so let's talk a little about Maelstrom, though. So Maelstrom would open up in 1988. It would eventually close up in about 2016. I don't remember. Somewhere around there, 15 or 16. I cannot think of off the top of my head right now. But Maelstrom would be a classic attraction that was beloved by many, many people. Now, there are still a few different references to Maelstrom that can be found over in the Norway Pavilion. If you're actually in line to meet Anna and Elsa over at their summer house, you can actually find a tapestry with the three-headed troll there. Back over the falls. Now, tapestries. What was the... Oh, that's Indiana Jones, where he's like, I'm here to inspect the tapestries. Tapestries? This is a castle, isn't it? Of course, this is a castle. But if you are the inspector, then I am Mickey Mouse. Remember that? Oh, you know what? We might as well go with that. So there are several different TV shows and movies throughout the years that have also played or paid tribute to Mickey Mouse in some way, shape, or form. However, Disney has paid tribute to Mickey Mouse in the most amazing and most elaborate ways throughout the entire, history of mankind. So one of the most famous ones is the idea of a hidden Mickey. Now, hidden Mickeys never actually appeared until 1982 officially. If you talk to some people, they'll be like, oh, look, there's these bubbles in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's a hidden Mickey. It's most likely just a coincidence. Hidden Mickeys would actually debut back in 1982. The reason they debuted back in 1982 was because at that time when they were building Epcot, the different people who were working on Epcot were like, hey, we're going to have so many cool things. We're going to have Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Daisy and Pluto and blah, blah, blah. And when they were going through, the heads of the company were saying, no, you cannot have these characters here. This is going to not be like the Magic Kingdom. It's not going to be like Disneyland. We need to have it so there are no Disney characters present, which is why we got characters like Figment instead. And some of the Imagineers, that just did not sit well with them. And they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to hide some Mickeys throughout the entire attraction. So they started to hide different hidden Mickeys throughout the entire attraction, which is how hidden Mickeys were actually created. So ever since 1982, hidden Mickeys became more and more popular until now. It's just one of those things that a lot of people are very well aware of. And if you actually pay attention to more movies after about 1989-ish, you can start to see more and more hidden Mickeys popping up in movies as well. 1989, of course, had one from The Little Mermaid. If you actually watch The Little Mermaid at the very start of the film, King Triton goes by, and in the crowd you can actually find Mickey, Donald, and Pluto, along with Kermit the Frog, hidden in that audience. Now let's talk a little bit about Kermit the Frog, because it's not that easy being green, so we might as well give him some love as well. So if you go over to Muppet Vision 3D, that was actually the very last time that Jim Henson would do the performance of Kermit the Frog himself. Prior to this, I'm trying to think of how we're going to get to this next one, but I'm slowly coming up with it. Prior to his passing, at this time, Jim Henson was actually considering selling his company, the Jim Henson Company, to Disney. And then when he passed away, his family said, we can't give this up right now. Like we're in mourning. We're not going to do it. However, they did work on a few different movies together, including Muppet Treasure Island, along with the Muppet Christmas Carol. Now, the Muppet Christmas Carol would go through and tell the story of the Christmas Carol, but from a Muppet point of view. This is not the first time they would actually go through and create a specific cartoon that was, a specific story around the Christmas Carol. They would also do a Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey back in 2009. And of course, they would also have the classic Mickey's Christmas Carol, which came out back in the 1980s. Now, when Mickey's Christmas Carol would come out in the 1980s, there was not a lot of popular movies that were coming out at that point. There's a lot of flops, things like The Fox and the Hound didn't do as well as they were hoping it would. Oliver and Company didn't do as well. The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron actually lost to the Care Bear movie that year in 1985 when it came out. Actually, when you would go to Disney in 1985 to about 1991, the only reference that was there for the Black Cauldron was over in Fantasyland. Now it's Storybook Treats. At that point, it was actually called Gurgi's Munchies and Crunchies. And Gurgi's Munchies and Crunchies would have it so it was a two-part restaurant. They would actually have it so there was two different kitchens. Eventually, the one kitchen would become Lumiere's kitchen. Lumiere, of course, from Beauty and the Beast. And then the other one would be Mrs. Potts' Cupboard. These two would actually remain this way up until 2010. And when 2010 came around, they decided that they were going to get rid of these two references to Beauty and the Beast, mainly due to the fact that New Fantasyland, which was being built at that time, was going to get a brand new section all around Beauty and the Beast, and they didn't want to confuse people and have it so there was a Beauty and the Beast section here and then another Beauty and the Beast section there. So the area that was originally Lumiere's kitchen eventually would turn into Friar's Nook. Okay, the Pirates of the Caribbean Dog. Okay. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go Friar's Nook. We'll go to him, and then we'll do maybe one more. We're definitely gonna do one more. Now let's take a look at our subscriber count. We are currently sitting at. We're still at that 3,548. So what we're gonna do is we're going to start off with Friar's Nook. We're going to make our way to the Pirates of the Caribbean Dog. And from there, if we get more subscribers, we will go to the next one as well. Otherwise, this is going to be our last hurrah, our last go at it, our last whatever. But let's talk a little bit about Friar's Nook, because Friar's Nook is not the most elaborate place that can be found on Disney property. In fact, they have brats and tots. And overall, both are pretty good. It's not the best restaurant. However, one of my favorite little details in the restaurant is if you look on the side, you can see that it was established in 1071, which would be 900 years before Disney World would actually open up. Now, when Walt Disney World would open up with the Magic Kingdom back on October 1st in 1971, there's a lot of classic attractions there. Things like the Country Bear Jamboree, the Tropical Serenade, which would eventually become known as the Enchanted Tiki Room. It was the Enchanted Tiki Room over in Disneyland. Over here, they decided to give it a different identification, so they called it the Tropical Serenade. But that's besides the point. We had the Swiss Family Treehouse, the Jungle Cruise, and then when people kind of go through and they talk a little bit about the history of Walt Disney World, a lot of people will always talk about classic attractions that were around on opening day. And one of the biggest ones that they will mention is Pirates of the Caribbean. Because Pirates of the Caribbean, yes, it seems like it would be a classic attraction from opening day. However, it did not open up until 1973. So let's talk a little bit about why it did not open up until 1973. So in 1971, when they were coming up with the idea of Walt Disney World, when they were building Walt Disney World, there was plans for a future expansion over in Frontierland, which would be an amazing idea. However, they did not have enough money for it initially. So they said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to build this entire elaborate thing and have it open up in about 1975, maybe 1977, maybe a little bit later than that. Not exactly sure exactly when it's going to open, but we're going to open it up sometime in the near future. So while they're going through and putting this on the back burner, all these different people started to come to Walt Disney World, and one of the things they realized was that Pirates of the Caribbean was not there. Now, the very last episode of the Disneyland television series that aired before Walt Disney passed away, there would be a few episodes that would air after he passed away too, but the very last one that aired right before he passed away, so it was, in a lot of people's minds, it was the last thing that was ever shot. It wasn't the last thing that was ever shot. There was the Epcot film was shot after that, a few episodes of the Disneyland television series up after that. And the very last thing that Walt Disney would ever film would actually be an entrance or an introduction to the film Follow Me Boys. Completely side story. But anyways, the very last episode that aired before Walt Disney passed away would be all about Pirates of the Caribbean. And he would be going through and talking all about Pirates of the Caribbean. And so a lot of people in their mind, they just kind of assumed that when they got to Walt Disney World, they would see this brand new attraction that Walt Disney was talking about for Disneyland, but it was not originally planned to come to Walt Disney World. So the main reason they did not bring it to Walt Disney World was because they figured, one, we've got this brand new idea for Frontierland expansion sometime in the near future. So also, we don't think many people are going to be interested in going to an attraction about the Caribbean when in reality they could just get in a car and drive to the Caribbean because Florida is that close to the Caribbean. So we might as well focus on something that's on the other side of the country, the frontier. So enough people complained when the park first opened up saying, hey, we thought the Pirates of the Caribbean was going to be here. It's not here. This is a travesty and we want our money back, or we're just, we're sad. So when enough people came forward, Disney said, you know what, we have to go through and we're going to take this money from the Western River Expedition, the name of the Frontierland thing, and we're going to put it into Pirates of the Caribbean. So when they brought it over to Pirates of the Caribbean, they brought over a lot of different classic things that they were going to plan, or that they had over in Disneyland, but they had to shorten up some scenes. So they got rid of the second drop. They also got rid of the entire treasure chamber from the very start. They also got rid of a few other scenes towards the middle of the attraction, but one of the scenes that they would keep in would be the Pirates of the Caribbean dog. All right, let's check out our subscriber thing. If we did not go up in subscribers at all, we will be ending right here. That was a lot of connect the dots. What did we start with? I don't even remember. What was our first one that we guys started with? The Tomorrowland Orchestra. So we started with Tomorrowland Orchestra. We went to Dole Whips, The Hustle Dance, Stitch's Great Escape, The Kitchen Sink, Lime Garage, Oh Canada, Sunny Eclipse, Discovery Island, Figment, Body Wars, No Way Jose, Bob Gurr, Wilderness Lodge, Victoria and Albert's, Maelstrom, Friar's Nook, and then the Pirates of the Caribbean dog. That's not bad at all. Okay, let's see here. We are still sitting at 3,548. I was really hoping that we'd hit 3,550 today. Well, the night is still young, possibly. All right, but we are going to be wrapping up. Wait a minute. Where'd it go? We're going to be wrapping up tonight's episode right there. As always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. Patreon pals. If you're not one, then you have fails. It's either going to be we're going to come up with a jingle at some point, or we're just going to keep on coming up with random rhymes at the start and the end of the show, and people are going to be very confused on what we're going to do. 10 more, you got this. So this guy right here told me that I need 3,558 subscribers of like 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Oh, I told you my prediction was going to be today too. But sadly, we might not hit there unless my YouTube short today is not taking off like I thought it was going to. I thought it was a good one, but it just did not hit the algorithm. All right, so we're going to wrap this up right here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us once again this week. Please keep on spreading the word about the Wednesday show and From Screen to Theme, and invite anyone and everyone to join the group over on Facebook. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure that you like and subscribe to this video right here, because every single like and every single subscribe truly helps us out a lot in the long run. As always, remember that anything that can happen. Remember, anything can happen if you let it. Until next week, have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Are they gone? Are they gone? Good, my cheeks are just killing me. I just can't stand this.